So welcome everyone to today's global webinar discussion on Domestic Violence Prevention Month, which is May here in Australia. So before we get started, I would also like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people and pay my respect to elders both present, past, present and future. So it's this is a traditional respect that we like to pay to the elders, both past, present, and future. So thank you everyone for joining today. We have an incredible opportunity to come together with a range of wonderful leaders and speakers in this industry. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time to come on today. Very honoured to be here amongst such incredible people, as well as sharing the message with our audience, with everyone who's able to join today, but also sharing the recording once we're finished as well. So I know that there are quite a few people who are keen to get this recording after. So as we're getting started today, I would just like to really share my sincere gratitude and just welcome everyone today. So as people are continuing to join, just wanted to pop where you're from in the chat so we can continue to engage with you throughout the conversation, and just recognizing where everyone is from. So we've got a few people from Adelaide, Melbourne, Louisiana in the United States. So just pop in where you're from, and what we will do throughout the conversation today is we've got 3 topics that we will cover. So feel free to pop in any questions or comments in the chat box as you go. If by some chance you haven't used Zoom before, down below there are a number of icons at the bottom of the Zoom box. So there is a button that you will see with chat, and there's each time a message comes up, you'll be able to see. So click on that chat button if you're not familiar with it and join the conversation. So type any questions or comments into the chat box, and after each topic, Dawnelle and I, my co-host, will be reviewing the questions and comments as we go. So at the end of each topic, we will come back and ask those relevant questions to the panel as we go. And then we will continue that after the second and third topic as well. So let's get started, shall we? We will start by introducing our speakers here today. So first, I would like to introduce my wonderful co-host, Dawnelle. And Dawnelle is joining us from Louisiana in the United States. Like I said, she has been an incredible client of mine who's come through the healing and empowerment programs and now doing completing the mentoring program as well. So it's been incredible to watch her growth over the past, it's been 1.5 years, hasn't it, Dawnelle? Wow, that's gone quite quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been so incredible to watch your growth and really evolve as a person. So thank you so much for really stepping into yourself. And I would like to also acknowledge that, of course, you are a domestic violence survivor, an overcomer, a blogger, a mother, and now a mentor. So as Dawnelle is a mother of 3, she has 2 teenage boys, a 4-year-old girl. She spent 16 years in a manipulative and controlling marriage. And in her unhappiness, she turned to other men to fill a void in her life. She got caught up in her transgressions, and that's when the physical abuse began. Through a physical domestic altercation, her story ends tragically with her children witnessing their father taking his life. Over the past 3 years, Dawnelle has begun a journey of healing from guilt, shame, low self-esteem, self-worth, and a lack of confidence. Dawnelle completed the programs through the Freedom Mentor, and she has now discovered her passion for connecting with people and coaching them through their healing journey. So she's joined the Freedom Mentor team, becoming a mentor to people who are working through their past traumas, low self-esteem, unhealthy environments, and who really are looking for freedom and purpose to find their clarity and direction. So welcome, Dawnelle, and thank you so much for being my co-host today.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for introducing me. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here this evening, this morning for others, and wherever anyone else is in the world. I have the privilege of introducing our hostess of this wonderful event. And this is Amy Hill. She is also an overcomer. And as you can already tell, she has a very gentle and welcoming spirit. And we met on Instagram, where she invited me to the Freedom Mentor program. And I'm so glad that I took the opportunity and stepping out into myself and learning who I am, even now as a grown woman. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce Amy to all of you. Amy is a domestic violence survivor, a mentor, author of My Life on Eggshells, and a speaker. After 10 years of her own domestic violence experience, falling into depths beyond belief, losing her house, career, and self-worth, Amy rose above the despair to truly discover herself and her freedom. Following this discovery, she felt inspired to share this and help other survivors, domestic violence, abuse, trauma, and narcissism. Amy founded the Freedom Mentors, where she facilitates, heals the Healing and Empowerment Program to clients globally. Her clients have had life-changing shifts and breakthroughs while feeling more connected with themselves than ever before. Through many platforms, Amy has helped educate, raise awareness of domestic violence, inspire empowerment, and mindset tips. Amy's growth and depth is evident, shown by her authenticity, personable, happy, and calm nature. She has dedicated her life to connect with other survivors, to expedite their healing journey. She balances her days with a deep connection to yoga, meditation, along with her partner, who together have 4 children, 2 fridges, and a healthy addiction to coffee. Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for hosting this wonderful seminar, and I look forward to being part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dawnelle. I appreciate that. And yes, definitely need 2 fridges with the 4 children, and also definitely need some coffee as well. So got a few more people joining us. So we'll continue with the introductions, and the next person who I would like to introduce to you today is the wonderful Stephen Wilson. So thank you so much for joining us today, Stephen. Stephen joins us as the CEO of Protective Group Australia. So Stephen is a passionate advocate of domestic violence victim survivors and is considered a leading expert in risk management around the safety of victims. He works closely with the Salvation Army, the government, police, and other not-for-profits. He's well regarded and a keynote speaker at many events and conferences. Stephen has a combined 37 years of experience, incredible, working in the law enforcement, security, investigations, and also the hospitality industry. While serving with the Victorian Police Force, he worked within the National Crime Authority, the Drug Squad, licensing, gaming, and vice branch, and as a criminal investigator. Having been awarded the prestigious Victoria Police Chief Commissioner's Award, Stephen is recognised as Australia's first long-term undercover police operative. What an incredible award. He also holds qualifications in security, investigations, risk management, and corrections. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for having me. I might have to update that by, I'm feeling really elderly today. It's now 40, I think it's 42 years or 44 years now, not 37. So yeah,
wow,
a bit more primitive there. But no, thanks for having me. I think I come in from a very different perspective and a different angle. Mine is more around that that sort of helping people in that really immediate need and how we can assist them to move forward safely. So appreciate being here. I also note, and I see her name is on the screen, Jess Hill. I must say, welcome to Jess. She's also been a tremendous voice and a change to family violence in Australia, especially ever since the series See What You Made Me Do. So welcome, Jess, and great to have you on board. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you, Amy. I will go ahead and introduce our next speaker and part of the panel. Her name is Kimberly Schruel, and she is an author, speaker, a mentor, a workshop facilitator, and also an overcomer. Just a quick little tidbit. I met Kimberly at a domestic violence workshop, and at that time she had met me. I was quite broken and I had just begun my journey, and she has always been someone I followed after that, and I am glad that we connected. So without further ado, let me go ahead and continue to introduce Kimberly. Kimberly is committed advocate for domestic violence prevention. In 2016, after enduring a life-threatening domestic incident that pushed her closer to God like never before, she discovered that her God-given purpose. It was from that very incident that God allowed her to birth her first book, Grace for Purpose, Discovering God's Plan for Your Life. Since then, Kimberly has dedicated her life to sharing her testimony with others. Kimberly, a graduate of Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is not only published author, she is also a motivational speaker, mentor, workshop facilitator, prayer warrior, and overcomer. She speaks with the power and authority of a woman who knows what it means to be healed and to forgive. Her greatest message to those experiencing any form of domestic abuse is do not suffer in silence. Seek the help you need and be restored to God's original intent for your life. Kimberly's passion is to awaken the desire within others to discover God's plan for their lives. She truly believes that everyone was created for God's predestined purpose. And once we discover his plan and purpose of our lives, we will then begin to live a fulfilled life. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Kimberly. You're such a graceful spirit and definitely a sister in Christ. And I'm glad that you joined. Thank you for taking the offer.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. So now I would like to introduce the wonderful Dr. Lata Satyen. So thank you so much for joining us, Lata. We are very privileged for you to join us as well. So the wonderful Dr. Lata, she joins us as a senior lecturer in psychology at Deakin University and as a registered psychologist. She is the co-convener of the Deakin Research on Violence Against Women Hub. Lata works as a pro bono psychologist and assists adults and children victim survivors of family violence in critical and non-critical situations. In 2017, she received the Government of Victoria Award for Excellence in Multicultural Affairs for her work in the area of family violence with migrant communities. In 2019, Lata won the Australian Crime and Violence Prevention Award from the Government of South Australia for the project addressing prevention of family violence in culturally diverse communities. And recently, last year, she was awarded the Janet Blackman Prize for the best paper published in the Journal of Gender Studies. Lata has secured funding from national and state level funding bodies and has been commissioned by the Law Enforcement Agency to evaluate family violence training programs. Welcome today, Lata.
Thanks very much, Amy. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Welcome, Lata. Thank you, Amy. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Alice Clark. And I have not met her yet, but I would certainly love to meet all of you if I travel over there to Australia. And it has been one place that I wanted to visit. So maybe sometime there in the future. But welcome, Alice. Thank you for joining. Alice is the executive director of Shelter SA, the peak body for housing. With a background in social science, Alice is a passionate advocate for a safe, affordable home for all people, especially those living on low incomes. So welcome, Alice. Is there anything else that you want to add?
Thank you, Dawnelle. No, I think that's enough, but I'll be very much looking forward to joining the conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just as a few more people joined us this morning, just wanted to mention that we will be checking the chat today. So feel free to join, use the chat button below and just type in any questions that you might have. After each topic, there will be 3 topics. So after each topic, we will review the chat and ask any questions to the panel or any comments. So without further ado, let's get started. Just wanted to share the intention today to be able to have this conversation and really open it up to be able to share with other people and have this incredible experience with the variety of people that we have today. So I'm very excited to be able to share this opportunity with such a variety of people. So thank you again. So with that being said, Dawnelle, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Amy. So we'll start by just laying the basic foundation about what exactly is domestic violence or domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is a pattern of abusive behavior in a relationship used to gain or maintain control over another person. And there's different forms of domestic abuse. There are physical, which that's without said. There's physical abuse, and it's usually something the easiest that somebody can see. But there's also emotional, economic, psychological, sexual, threatening, and then stalking. And even nowadays, there's cyber stalking. So I'm just going to give a little background about the different types of domestic violence. And then I will just give a little more information. So the first one is emotional. And this is basically undermining a person's sense of self-worth through constant criticism, belittling, or other types of verbal abuse. It's damaging a partner's relationship with their children, also, and their family and friends. Then the second type is psychological abuse. And this causes fear by intimidation, threatening physical harm to themselves, partner, or children, or other family members. And can also be destruction of pets and property, as well as forcing isolation from friends and family. And then we have economic abuse. This is usually making someone financially dependent by maintaining control over their financial resources, withholding access to money, having all of the bank account information. But it could also be that the abused partner is the breadwinner in the household, and the other party forces or manipulates all the transactions to go into their name, or what they'll do with their money. And that's another form of the economic abuse. And then there's also sexual abuse. It involves forcing a partner to take part in a sexual activity an act that the partner does not consent to. This can be within a marriage or within a dating scene or any other type of relationship. And then we also have stalking. And as I mentioned before, stalking has moved from the physical stalking. It could also be cyber stalking. And this is any form of behavior that doesn't serve as a legitimate purpose and is intended to harass, annoy, or intimidate or terrorize someone. And so domestic violence affects individuals in every community, regardless of their age, their economic status, their sexual orientation, their gender, their race, their religion, or their nationality. And women are the largest group of victims. However, men, children, and the elderly can also be victims of domestic violence. So, that's a high-level overview of domestic violence. If anybody has any questions or wants to talk more about it, I'm sure anyone from the panel would love to get a little bit further into that. But let's go ahead and get started with our panel discussion.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that insight and introduction and overview of the different forms of domestic violence. So our first topic for today is, what are the impacts of domestic violence on families as one point, but also communities as a second point? So for me, within families, I experience the strain on the relationship, on the different relationships. So with my parents, my sisters, also my extended family as well. My cousins, grandma, it really does put a strain on the relationships in a lot of different ways. Potentially they don't understand. So a lot of education and awareness could be done to help that, but also financial impacts, and also like my kids, what they were witnessing. So there's a lot of impact from that. And then they see, like, they grow up with learned behavior. But the silver lining in that is, of course, seeing me overcome and really triumph that. So there's a great positive in there. Also, the inability to be able to do daily tasks, and more widely in the community, what I really find interesting as I become more and more involved in the industry over the last few years is how we actually talk about this. What's the language we are using to really highlight this and share this? So that's something that really lands with me that I'd like to continue to raise. The other thing I'd like to, of course, add is regarding communities, is the support that's required for victim survivors and the intervention services needed. So just as a bit of an introduction to that topic, I will pass over to Lata.
Thank you, Amy. Using an evidence-based perspective, the impacts are many on women and children and communities broadly. In relation to children, the evidence is still is not substantial. We need to do more research in relation to the ongoing effects of trauma amongst children, but also assessment services actually examining the effects on children when the women go to services as they need help. The children aren't seen as individual victim survivors, and so their needs are not being assessed. And so if their needs are not assessed, then we will not really know fully the impact on children and their ongoing service needs as well. So what we do know through research is that their cognitive functioning could be impacted, and because of the ongoing trauma, if they have witnessed or directly experienced abuse. And again, they are lost in the system because they are not being seen as an individual survivor. And so we need to be doing a lot more in relation to looking at the ongoing effects of trauma on children, and then supporting their mums or other caregivers as well, because if the caregivers don't know what is happening with the children, they can't fully support the children. So there will be that ongoing impact for both or everyone in the family when we still don't know what the impact is fully at the starting stage. So services really need to be doing more work in assessing the impact of witnessing abuse or experiencing abuse amongst children and supporting them as required. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you for sharing that, Lata. Stephen, would you like to continue?
Thank you. I must say, very hard to expand after the points that both of you made. Amy, starting with yours, obviously. I would have said exactly the same thing. I look at it more from an operational perspective because I'm sort of there in that really early intervention process. I made some notes earlier on. I think you've covered them. So, but the feeling isolated and not listened to, damage to people's physical health and mental health, especially since we've seen the last 2 years the increase of coercive control, the financial and technology abuse really exacerbated during the COVID times. And I think technology and financial abuse really became, as a loose term, but I would say the perpetrator's weapon of choice. It was something that really became noticeable in the last couple of years. Damaging family bonds, you touched on that, Amy. And I think also the effects upon children and exposing them. I think you covered off. I think we all understand the impacts on the victim, and especially hearing it from yourself. Maybe if I could just address the community side of things. For the people that don't reside in Australia, we live in a country, I think we're around 11% of our land mass is about 11% of total land mass. It's a huge country. It's very, I've just come back from Perth, so it's you realise how remote we are when you're out there. Communities, local, small, remote communities, and how people can really victim survivors suffer in those smaller, remote regional communities. When you live in a township with 400 people and the perpetrator's best mates with the local police, he's best mates with the publican, et cetera, I think that has really awkward on victims. And I thought I might just bring in also, just quickly, the community, so the effects on community. I think it's more so if we look at Aboriginal communities that are remote, and Aboriginal victims, women who are 32 times more likely to be victims of family and domestic violence, that's something we really need to address here. Living in a remote community and being the victim of abuse is that impact upon the local community. So that's my input on it. I really feel for women victims nationally in regional areas that don't get the same level of support that traditionally your victims might get in a capital city. So it's something I really am passionate about.
Thank you for sharing, Stephen. And yeah, I definitely agree that isolation and remoteness just adds to it. So Kimberly, would you like to continue?
Sure. When I think about the impact on families, I work at a school. I'm an exceptional student services coordinator, what they call the special education coordinator. And so I can imagine we know that domestic violence, it literally destroys the family, the fabric or the unit, right? And so you have these children who are exposed to these different acts and these incidents. And so it does something to their self-esteem. It does, I believe that I can imagine that it would cause a mistrust in adults. You know, you have, my mother or my father, whichever is the aggressor, is the one that's supposed to, protect and care for me, but I can't trust you because you're abusing, me or the one that I love. And so what happens is we'll start to see behavior, shift in behavior at school. You'll see acting out, you'll see anger, you'll see shutting down, not talking, changing their personality. And so when you your students, you know that there's something, going on. And so then you run the risk of getting Child Protective Services involved, right? And so then that happens. And now, the parents are affected. Now they have to come out and do an investigation. And so when you think about how the community is impacted, you come to work and it should be a safe space. But now that this information is made known, now your aggressor can come to the school, possibly harass you and now colleagues, and you are in danger. It's just a trickle down effect. And it is, something that I think there needs to be more conversation around domestic violence. It's been hush hush. I know, more people are coming out and sharing about it, but to have and make it clear and known that even at your job, that there's a safe space here, that we have resources for you, knowing what to say, and just to be a listening ear. But then it also, really, I believe, depends on the individual. Are they willing to share, certain things that are going on in their private lives? And so I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of some of the things that you've already said, but just, working in the school system, I see a lot. And, a lot of times children are said, whatever goes on in this house stays in this house, and so then you're kind of forced with, okay, well, how do I proceed with this? I know we have to be the ones who are reporting, certain things. And so it's just, I don't know, it's just a horrible situation, but it definitely has to be, rectified. And I'm interested in even more of the research that Lata spoke about earlier. So that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Alice, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you, Amy. For families, domestic violence has a huge impact on where they live. So in Australia, we have this system set up, a shelter system that is a crisis response to women and children fleeing domestic violence, and that is very much needed. However, across the country, last year we had almost 300,000 people who experienced homelessness in this country. Domestic violence is the second leading cause of homelessness in this country, and 40% of that massive number were children and young people. So that's from age 0 years up to about 24. The majority of those children are accompanying a parent who's experienced domestic violence, predominantly women. So I would have to say that one of the massive impacts on families is that they experience homelessness. If they're lucky enough to get into a shelter, the shelters are always full. If they're lucky enough to have a bit of respite and they need to leave the family home, the violent home, they cannot do so. So in this country, thousands of women return to violent homes because of affordability in the private rental market and our lack of social housing or public housing, government housing in this country. So those numbers are pretty damning and upsetting. And I think the cost to society of this system working or not working as it is are massive. We seem to do everything at the crisis end and don't do enough in the prevention space. And that's something I'm very passionate about.
I definitely agree, Alice. It seems to be similarly with other organisations. It's more reactive, like we want to be proactive and exactly have that prevention, like not working behind the mark. So definitely raising awareness and having important conversations like this to hopefully engage more people and bring this issue to light is definitely needed. Dawnelle, would you like to add and then introduce our second topic?
Yes, Amy. So I'm going to come from the perspective of being a woman that was in a course of marriage and how it affects my children and how it affects me raising my children. I came from a very shameful and guilt-ridden place when I finally got out of things. And you turn and you raise your children out of guilt a lot of times. So you allow them to do things that you probably wouldn't, or you would say, when you were growing up, that's not something that I would do. That's not something that you would allow. But it's until you come into yourself and you start to heal that you finally respect yourself, you respect your children, you respect your family and your friends, that you start to realize that you can't raise them like that and that it's okay. It's okay to have gone through something, but you're still the head of the household. You're still the woman. You're still the breadwinner. You're still the one that works and takes care. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's how my children were affected, and to see now that there was also control going on with my children. My heart bleeds and cries when I think of that, but we're all overcoming as a family. And I'm stepping into myself and my space, and I'm learning that even though I've gone through something, I can still put my foot down and I can still manage the household. So I think that's the biggest piece for me. And then also in my situation, in many situations, you're isolated from your family and friends. In my situation, I moved away from my hometown and I went far away. And so there was no one I could connect with. I was not allowed to speak to my family and my friends. And so many things were filled into my head of reasons why I could not. And it's only towards the end where I finally was starting to see, and I said, yes, I reached out to friends and family, and I tried to figure a way through even before the tragedy happened in my marriage. But those are my 2 cents on that topic. So let's move on to the next topic. Did we have any questions or comments that have come up in the chat? I do apologize, Amy. I had to switch to my phone. My desktop wasn't working. But do we have any questions or comments that came up in that before we move to the next topic?
That's all good. The main thing is that your internet is working and you're here. We don't have any questions at the moment. However, perhaps if people just want to share what their biggest takeaway is from that topic discussion, and just let us know, what's your biggest takeaway? So what have you found most interesting, most insightful? If you want to pop that into the chat box, and let's continue with our next topic. Thank you, Dawnelle.
Okay, so our next topic is on how do we create change? Very, very interesting topic. I'm going to say that to create change, you have to first start to talk about it, and start to talk about it in the places in which you are uncomfortable. Coming from experience, I have just shared my story at my place of work. And it's amazing that the feedback and things that you get from other women and other people when you tell your story. It's finding people, finding the other women and people who have gone through traumatic experiences and been in that kind of relationships, to tell their stories, to let them know that you don't have to be shameful, you don't have to have guilt. You can get back into society. So I think that roundtables and talking about it and really getting out there and finding services and people that are willing to mentor and figure out, how do you change, how do you move from one space in your life to the next. It's programs like the Freedom Mentor program and different programs like that give you the tools that you need to make the change and the healing that you need within your life. So that's what I have to say on the topic. So let's go ahead and move on. And Lata, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dawnelle. And it's been so insightful listening to everyone's perspectives on both the topics as well. I will again speak from some of the research that we've been conducting, and in terms of what changes are required. Well, lots of changes across multiple systems are required. And if all of those multiple systems do not work in a cohesive and integrated way, we will not see the full change. And in fact, that's why we are still seeing so many incidents of family violence across Australia, but also across the world and across different communities. So in terms of the changes, what is required, our research consistently shows that we need more culturally relevant programs, both in terms of interventions and prevention programs, but also the services that are currently catering to the needs of women and children. Most programs operate using a generic model, a Western model of intervention. And this is where women and children from minority ethnic communities who require services that will actually understand, first of all, their cultural values and norms, and have that as a central aspect when they are actually providing their service. They're almost non-existent. There are very few services such as those in Australia, and we still don't have much evidence in terms of how they're working as well. So we really need a lot of culturally relevant programs, services to understand that people might have different needs based on their cultural background, that they might not be ready to actually even seek assistance. So I've been doing lots of research in relation to help-seeking behavior across different communities. And what we know is that a lot of people don't even know the 000 number. The 000 number is the emergency number here in Australia, and I understand it is 911, I think, in America, and of course it is other numbers across the world. So they don't even know the 000 number. And so how do we get the information across to communities and to women who actually require such information? So there needs to be community change. There needs to be a difference in how we disseminate information. We cannot only assume that using the mainstream models of information dissemination will actually reach the people who require it. We need to be promoting information in different languages. In Australia, we speak over 200 languages. And so we need to, again, promote information in different languages so that the communities that require them will be able to access them. And all the other services as well. Let's say they refer you to a particular website. Most of them, again, are available in the English language. So again, just information sharing needs to happen in different languages, but then also we really require changes in relation from the community. So community attitudes need to change. We might say, and we are talking a lot about gender equality and how that should be the premise for change and reducing violence. But do we understand what gender equality means for each community? Again, this is where I've been doing some research. And when I speak to each community, I start off from the very basic level. Okay, what are your perspectives in relation to cooking and child caring, domestic chores? And they say, well, the men in the room might say, well, that's really not my job. I've never been taught to do that. I don't know how to do it. And then you ask them about, okay, do you believe in gender equality? They say, yes, absolutely. I'm all for gender equality. And then you ask the women, they say as well, I want gender equality and I want there to be equal sharing of chores and so on. And then even if we probe some of the communities further, they say, well, I want them to help. But then they also say, well, he doesn't do a good job, so I actually prefer doing it myself. So the thing is, what are we asking people to really do here when we're advocating for gender equality? So we need to inform communities. We need to understand what communities really understand about gender equality, and then ensure that our programs will actually cater to the needs of each community. Thank you, Dawnelle.
Thanks, Lata. You made some very good points there. So let's keep moving. Stephen, did you have anything to add?
I don't know how many points you could make around such a question. How do we create change? I made some notes earlier on, and it's probably again being covered. I think we need to challenge ourselves. I think we need to think outside the traditional square. My first call to a domestic violence case was when I was 17 years old as a young recruit in 1978. So have I seen much change over the last 44 odd years? I hope I have, but there's a need obviously to create a lot more change. We need more support and pathways for victims. We need to hold perpetrators to account. So remembering that my background in policing probably makes me focus more on a crisis response and not so much a prevention response. I think about more that we've come in after an incident's happened and how do we stop it happening further. But I think one of the big things, there's two big things I'd make here. We need to change the police culture and attitudes, especially at the front line of policing. Police traditionally spend 40% of their time dealing with family violence incidents. It's something that clearly most of them don't want to do. They are trying to change the culture, the sort of embedded racism that they have towards other nationalities and cultures. Policing needs to change. People call it corruption. It's not corruption, it's a culture. It's a culture that's embedded in the young police when they're joining at 17 or 18 years of age. It's a real big thing because you know what? They're at the front line. And how they respond makes a big difference to how that victim's trauma travels along her journey. So policing is a real big issue. The other thing I've made a note of here, encouraging men to understand what the problem is. And I know that's awareness and education. I often say to people, I can't make excuses for my gender. A lot of men will say to me, all you want to do is look after women. And I say, well, after 15,000 victims that I've probably looked after from our company in a dozen years, there's been maybe 4 men or 5 men. I know a lot of it comes from the funding, because the funding is mainly to help women, but clearly it's a gender issue. Clearly men need to step up. I went to a conference last week in New South Wales, a DV conference. There was 350 attendees at the conference. There was 4 men. Now, 4 men out of 350, seriously, men have to stand up, step up, man up, if you want to put it that way. Let's look at it as it is. Men need to start getting involved in the conversation, the dialogue as well. that's how I see it. But you can throw all the money you want at this. It's not going to solve until you change people's perspectives and the whole gender equality issue. Teach men from growing up as kids, they need more empathy. Men need to be taught it's not soft to be empathetic to other people. That's how I feel. So I'm probably passionate on that point. We need to change men's perceptions. We need to encourage men to step up and be more involved and be a voice. There shouldn't be four men at a conference. There should be 140 men having an input. That's how I feel. I hope that helps a bit.
Thank you, Stephen. That's a good perspective. I absolutely agree. So let's see, we're getting very close to our hour of our discussion. So I think we need to start to move on to the next topic. Would you agree, Amy? And we can have Kimberly and Alice give their opinions on those.
Yeah, absolutely. We are quickly running out of time. Thank you for that, Dawnelle. With that in mind, Alice, would you like to perhaps cover both of your points? And I'll let you continue.
Thank you, Amy. And yes, we could talk all day about this. So I'm just going to smash this out in very quickly. So apologies for the haste. What do we need to do to bring change? 3 words: prevention, prevention, prevention. The way I see this happening is through national leadership at the highest level of government, through our national strategy to prevent domestic violence, through our state-based strategies to prevent domestic violence. We work in silos. We've got government agencies that don't work together. To make change, we need them working across domestic violence, housing, child protection, mental health, drug and alcohol support. We do not have that in this country. Got a huge focus on after the first incident of violence, and that needs to change. Totally agree with Stephen. We need more men. We need more men working with men. We need more perpetrator programs that keep families together and keep them safe when we can. That addresses the housing crisis. We need more education from our very young children to learn about what we call here respectful relationships. That is addressing gender equality, communication and problem solving. All the service providers I speak to that work directly with young people say they can't communicate, they can't sort their problems out. So I know that's only just touching the sides, but on a systems level, that's what I believe that we need to do better in this space.
Thank you so much, Alice. I definitely agree. It starts at the top from a national level, and it needs to be in combination and supported by government agencies, which is why this theme this year is so relevant. The Domestic Violence Prevention Month theme for this year is All of Us Together. And it couldn't be more relevant or more helpful to really start the discussion today. So I think I definitely agree. Your 3 words are key: prevention, prevention, prevention. So our third and final topic today we wanted to talk about was what's the one thing that has or will change the trajectory of a survivor's life? Kimberly, would you like to start that discussion?
Sure. If I could just speak from personal experience, I think the one thing that will change the trajectory of a survivor's life is deciding, and I think I kind of spoke about this earlier, but deciding to move forward, to go through that process of forgiveness and healing. You know, when I think about, you know, the incident that I endured, almost losing my life, I decided that I refuse to be bitter. I refuse to be depressed. I refuse to live in unforgiveness. And so I'm going to, you know, decide to trust God in this process, and be made over again, right? Having to build my self-esteem, but that comes with a choice. And so that has literally changed the trajectory of my life. So I'm not the same person that I was in 2016 when I almost lost my life, right? So I know my self-worth. I know who I am. I know the importance of having standards and, you know, things of that nature. And so that's what I would say would change the trajectory of a survivor's life. And so just to wrap it up, I know we talk about surviving, but I like to say that I'm an overcomer, because to me, when I think about surviving, that denotes that you made it through, right? But then there comes that extra piece of healing. You know, are you able to, have you moved past this, you know? And so I like to get to encourage others to get to that place of overcoming. So thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I'm going to be quicker this time, but one thing, I have a couple of quick notes. I said encouraging economic security for victims, I think is vital. Again, on the crisis response and prevention, I fully concur with Alice. Early intervention. I feel that if you can reduce this trauma at the earliest time possible, stop the escalation of any violence, protect, prevent, safety, security, all wrapped in one sort of bundle, being believed from that point on and someone helping them. And as I say, mainly stop the escalation at that point as best as you can.
Thank you. Lata, would you like to continue?
Yes, and I will be quicker as well. Support at every level, from the time that they're thinking of making a decision to get help, and from the time if they decide to choose to leave, and then during the process of leaving itself, after that, and then as well as for their long-term recovery. And all of the support needs to be culturally relevant as well. If we don't provide culturally specific support, again, we will not be able to help women and children change the trajectory of their lives. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, you know, it's all about having this conversation. For me, similarly to what Kimberly has shared, having that healing, you know, that's the first step. Taking the, first of all, having the awareness, having the acceptance of what the situation you're in. And then, of course, the third point, action. You need to do something about it. So where to get that support from, providing that framework, which is all about having the awareness. So the more awareness we have, the more conversations we have, and then the more people are going to know where to get this help from. It shouldn't be difficult to find help. So with that in mind, if you'd like to just share what your biggest takeaways are from the conversation today. For me, I really enjoyed the highlight from Stephen about living remotely and experiencing these issues. I think that is that's a really important point to share. So thank you for bringing that to light. It actually has a lot more impact when you're not able to access the services or help or family or friends. And in our second topic of how to create change, I really appreciated Lata bringing to highlight the culturally relevant programs and services that need to be put in place. There's certainly not enough of that. More needs to be done in terms of language and services provided. There is definitely a lack in Australia. Also appreciated Stephen's point about more needs to be done with men. That was incredible. 350 people at the conference and only 4 being men. Thank you for being there, Stephen, and being one of 4. So hopefully we can increase those numbers very quickly in the near future. And in the last topic, I really enjoyed Alice's point about prevention. from a national, state level, and also just getting everyone together, government agencies working together, supporting each other. And like I said, that really embodies the theme of domestic violence prevention this year, all of us together. So I really just want to acknowledge all of us together. I want to acknowledge our speakers for coming on today. I want to acknowledge everyone who was able to attend and everyone who will view this in the future. So I would love for you to rally behind each other and support each other as professionals and for survivors currently and for survivors in the future. So really support each other, and that's how we're going to be able to connect with each other and really build a strong network around domestic violence. So if you would like to drop any links in the chat box to connect. Otherwise, I know that we are all on LinkedIn. If you would like to reach out to us and connect, we are all on LinkedIn to connect and continue the conversation. So with that being said, I would just like to briefly touch on my experience with creating the Freedom Mentor. As I said, Dawnelle has come through the healing program, and I'd love to be able to share this incredible healing program, which works through a lot of the hard things, but also building that self-worth. So connecting this program with not only individuals, but organizations as well, to really create the change and help people from different levels through organizations as well as through individuals. We also have this monthly webinar, Developing Awareness EduSeries, which has a different topic on domestic violence each month. So if you'd like to share any of your takeaways in the chat, I haven't been able to keep up with the last few comments there, but yeah, just try and consider for yourself. Take a moment to reflect. What are your takeaways from this conversation? What can you do to help? What from your own personal level? Connect with other people, have the conversations, share what you learned from today. Actually start those conversations. So with that in mind, I would like to just thank everyone for coming today. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, or if you would like to take the discussion further, feel free to contact our speakers through LinkedIn or myself. I would love to engage with you further. So thank you everyone for coming today. Enjoy this great election day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Well done.